the flood of asylum requests, which we know that the Border Patrol now has to, anyone that applies for asylum, they have to treat it as if it's legitimate, whether it is or not. All make us wonder about security and the Border Patrol operations here in the Rio Grande Valley. And we've already seen the National Park Service politicized, so it's not too hard to believe that the Border Patrol has been politicized as well. And in fact, we've seen this in the past with the Border Patrol and other federal agencies. So we brought in Chris Cabrera today. He's with Local 3307 of the National Border Patrol Council, and we wanted him to talk about what he's hearing from the troops in the field about how this is panning out here in the McAllen sector. And what have you been hearing, Chris, about what's going on in the field here in McAllen? How does this work out or portray here? What are the troops in the field telling you?
Well, none of our members have told us of being told to stand down. What we have seen is a lack of deployment. We've had issues before where our flanks are left open. All of our agents aren't being deployed out to the field, which creates big gaps between one station and the neighboring station.
So when you say there's a lack of deployment, in other words, they're not putting the people up on the border, up on the river where the enforcement should be taking place.
Yeah, exactly. You see the numbers heavily stacked towards the inside the station with the processing, with the different duties. It seems to be that every day there's a new duty, a new job description that pops up, and they have to keep an extra 3 or 4 agents in there. Also up at the checkpoint stations, you see most of the agents are in and around the checkpoint, but it leaves the far west and far east areas of their area of operation open, which creates big funnels.
So if you have two stations that are side by side, and neither one of them, say the one station is not covering their eastern area, and the one on the next station over is not covering their western area, it leaves actually a big gap for alien traffickers or for narcotics traffickers.
Exactly, it leaves a huge gap, and these guys that are smuggling, they know where these gaps are at, and they're able to find them and exploit them.
So leaving the sides open like this really means we have open border again, no matter what we're told, right?
Yeah, no matter how you cut it, the border's open. The effectiveness is a lot lower than the number they're putting out there.
So when we uh, have you guys been told that this is because of budgetary restraints, or is this kind of administrative stuff, or is this just poor leadership, or is this stuff coming down from a higher level, or can you tell?
I think it's a little bit of each one you mentioned. Obviously it's budgetary. At first there was no gas, and then there was gas but no manpower. They couldn't seem to get both of them. As far as leadership goes, I guess the ones at the top end, they don't want to hear that it's out of control down here at the lower end. And if it wasn't for these local police departments and DPS, we would be overrun already.
So what we see is every time there's a sequester, every time there's a budget situation, even though the Border Patrol is qualifies as an essential service, they are essential to the protection of our country, to our borders. Yet they become politicized, and these kind of things happen with the Border Patrol as well.
Yeah, exactly. And our men and women are out there. They're out there today. They're out there every day this week, even though they know that the paycheck isn't coming. But this dates back probably about a year from today. That's when it first started with a lack of funding, lack of manpower. It's been leading up to now, and who knows what next month's going to bring.
It seems to me, and I used to be with the Border Patrol, it seems to me like the Border Patrol is a big political football. You have both sides want to give it a kick every now and again, and both sides want to use it when it can further their cause, but both sides seem to, deep down inside, resent or not even want to further the mission of the Border Patrol. Is that what it feels like to the agents in the field?
Yeah, it's a shame that a lot of our guys, they do this job just out of the love of the job. I mean, the morale is dropping greatly just for the fact of over the past year they've been our pay has been an issue, our manpower has been an issue, everything's been an issue, and now it's finally come to the point where unfortunately agents are looking to get second jobs just to make rent.
When you talk about pay being an issue, can you kind of talk about what's
Yeah.
been going on with the pay for Border Patrol agents?
Oh, for the last few years, they've been talking about taking us down in pay. We've put some things on the table as far as the Border Patrol Pay Reform Act, which was introduced by Senator John Tester out of Montana. With that, it would there would be no need for a 5-year plan, a 4-year plan. This would put the agents back on the line immediately. There would be a 1-day turnaround from working an 8-hour shift back to a 10-hour shift, which would close all these gaps that we're having that Mr. Moran is addressing, and it would save the Border Patrol hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 5 years.
So the Border Patrol right now is working 8-hour shifts,
Well, we're working an 8-hour shift, and then we have an additional
2 hour.
1.5 to 2, depending on what station you're at, where you're at. But they're trying to whittle that down little by little.
What's
So
that extra time is for what? The hour and a half to 2 hours.
that extra time is well, obviously we have to have overlapping shifts so that we can you can hit that coverage in between. However, they're whittling that down little by little. So with that, we're not getting the coverage that we need.
So the idea was, as I understood it when I was in the Border Patrol, that AUO is uncontrollable, administrative uncontrollable overtime, was to
Which
make
means
sure.
it's not controlled by administration.
Yeah, in other words, it doesn't come and go. It's assumed that you're going to work an extra 2 hours every day on your shift. Most Border Patrol agents work 10-hour shifts, and that builds in an hour or 2 hour overlap on all the shifts. And what happens is, my experience, and Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, that smugglers try to work those seams also. They try to move the loads
Sure.
right along those seams. So what happens is, if you're the shift that's worked 8 hours and you catch a big case, now you got to do the paperwork for the next 4 or 5 hours and get everybody processed and the drugs, categorized and weighed and all this kind of stuff. So the idea was to put this overtime in there so that in the meantime, the new shift is out there in the field while the old shift is dealing with this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, what we're seeing now with these budget cuts and these budget shortfalls is that uncontrollable overtime is being controlled by managers, and they're telling you, well, look, we've been watching your hours. You have more than say 15, 16 hours for this pay period. You know what? You need to come in, or you know what? You're not gonna go out in the field today, and so they're controlling this
If you
uncontrollable
don't go out in
overtime.
the field, then you don't get the uncontrollable overtime.
Exactly.
You do your 8 hours and go home.
Yeah, and unfortunately, towards the end of the pay period, you have more and more guys that are close to that limit, and they're bringing those guys in early so that they don't go over that mark. Which
Aren't they budgeted though on the uncontrolled overtime? In other words, when they get a budget figure out of Congress, they assume that uncontrolled overtime.
yeah, technically it is budgeted, but for some reason they see that as a way to pull the funding back.
One of the things that I saw for a long time in the Border Patrol was it seemed like the people, oftentimes at the top, really didn't care about the mission or didn't really care about the troops on the ground. I remember watching Outstanding Employee of the Month awards go to secretary after secretary after secretary when there was hundreds of agents out there who
That
couldn't
just shows
get
they're not stupid. These guys, you
who,
can't cross your secretary.
hundreds of agents out there who couldn't get an Employee of the Month, no matter if they got shot at or if they seized thousands of pounds of drugs. It didn't matter what, they couldn't get Employee of the Month. But all the people in the rear, in the training, tied to the rear echelon, were the ones that received all this. Is it still weighted that way, where it seems like the emphasis is on the rear echelon, and the guys that are out in the field are the lowest common denominator, the guy that the least concerned about?
Yeah, it seems like there's a huge disconnect. People forgot that at some point they were out there in the field, and unfortunately, you have some guys that have promoted who've never been in the field.
Whoa.
That was a big problem. They would jump services back and forth, and so you had people who basically had been trainees that were now field operations supervisors and APICs and
There's
chiefs
hope for
and
me,
things
right?
like that. Yeah, if you get your
Some of
2
that
years
federal
in.
retirement.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Chris, about I know that reporting, when I was in the Border Patrol, they used to play a lot of games with the numbers. We would do an operation. If we caught a lot of aliens, it was a big success because we caught a lot of aliens. Then we would do another operation or a similar operation. We would catch nothing, and it was a big success because we caught none, because we're deterring. And I watched them play games. No matter what happens, it's always a big success because they played with the numbers. And I know one of the biggest numbers for the Border Patrol is the got-away numbers, and having truth in reporting gotaways. So is the Border Patrol still reporting these numbers correctly, or are the troops being told to sway these things as the Border Patrol is being politicized more and more?
I don't think the Border Patrol has probably ever reported these gotaways correctly. The thing with the gotaways is the more gotaways there are, obviously, the less effective the border patrols. Um,
Looks.
yeah, the less effective it looks. And right now, what's happening is they're discouraging agents from calling in these correct numbers. Anytime you hit over, say 35, 40, as an agent, you go out there, you know what you're doing. You're counting. It's called sign. Um,
But sign is actually the tracks made by the people as they enter the U.S.
Yes, and you look at this these tracks and you count them up. If you get over a certain amount, they want to send somebody out there to verify it and then create reports and generate this and generate that, and it just becomes cumbersome. Also, they're telling if nobody's going out there to the far west, how are those numbers those gotaways ever going to be counted? And at the end of the day, it looks like, well, nobody reported gotaways from the far west area. It must be a zero. Nobody got away, when in actuality nobody counted them. So who knows how many are out there?
So when you're doing operations, you know when there's intrusions coming in, you know how many people you apprehend, and then you take the number you apprehend from the number of trails, the number of tracks that you see coming in, and that tells you what your gotaway ratio is. It tells you that, let's say you apprehend six, but you have sign from 20. Six from 20 leaves 14 that got away. They were not apprehended. Is that
Yeah,
how it works?
yeah, exactly. And the border patrol would love to have the people believe that we're at an 80% apprehension rate, or an effectiveness rate, when in actuality we're probably more in the high 20s, low 30s.
See, this is the scary thing for me when they talk about immigration reform. They always say we just need someone to certify how effective we are. But I can tell you that the Border Patrol can't be trusted to certify this from my own experience. They'll play with the numbers however they want to politically help the organization and help people get promoted. And in this case, if there's whole sections of the border, the seams, the outside, the flanks of the different station areas are not being counted at all, and then they're being discouraged from counting them, how does this affect the overall border patrol effectiveness in the field? I mean, what does it look like?
Yeah, like I said, the border patrol would love to have the public believe we're in the high 80s, low 90s. In actuality, we're somewhere in the low 30s. And it's just going to get worse. And the more you pull people towards the center, obviously they're scouted on the Mexican side. These smugglers know what they're doing, and they're going to exploit our gaps. They're going to exploit our weaknesses and continue to funnel people through. And not all these people are from Mexico. You have some from, African countries, from you know the Asia area.
Somebody told me that on a ranch somewhere near Lynn San Manuel, a vehicle came charging in, dumped off some Pakistanis, and the vehicle turned around and split. Does this make any sense to you?
I believe it. We've caught people from Pakistan. We've caught people from Somalia. We've caught them from all over.
Somalia. How are they going to blend?
It's not a matter of blending. It's what they're coming here to do. Are they coming here just to work, as we've all been told? Are they coming here to take advantage of the system, or are they
Al
people like this
Shabaab.
who come from terrorist nations? Are they coming here to harm to our country and to our citizens? And this is the point. NSA is monitoring every citizen, but we can't monitor the aliens. We can't monitor the border, and that's a huge problem for us.
You're listening to The Drive Home on News Talk 710 KURV.
1-800-580-8255. What do you think about the current administration politicizing everything from law enforcement to the parks, to the park rangers, to the border patrol? As Chris is talking about here, he's saying that, in fact, we're being told that we are given a false sense of security or effectiveness about what's going on the border, when in fact, far from that is what's actually happening. In fact,
Hmm.
the numbers are very much against what we're being told. We're left to believe that the Border Patrol is much more effective than they are, because gotaways are not being reported, and because they're not even checking.
Gotaways?
That's what they call them, those who got away.
Okay.
That's Border Patrol
Oh.
language. They're the gotaways. Those that were seen, as I talked about earlier. If you apprehend six and you have tracks of 20, that means 14 got away. They weren't apprehended. And so the Border Patrol used to try to keep those numbers as best they could. And no matter when you do that, your numbers are never going to be truthful anyway, because a lot of the people that got away they're trying to get away. That means they don't want to leave trails so that you can start looking for them and find them. So they're also doing things to hide their tracks too. So even if the true numbers are being reported, they still wouldn't be the true numbers. But if they're clearly not cutting sign, they're not checking certain areas around the edges of
Mm-hmm.
the border, then we're not getting real numbers. And we talked to you on the break, Chris, about where is this coming from? Because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is coming right from Washington D.C. This politicizing the Park Service and politicizing the tours, bringing the tours to an end, which don't normally require Park Service personnel. In fact, I understand some of the Republican members of Congress are now doing private tours, leading people through the Capitol building and things
Well,
right
it's
now.
good for them to do honest work.
Yeah, there you go. And anyway, so I wanted to ask you, where do you think that this is coming from? I know that from your position, the troops on the ground, you see the result, but you don't know where that it's coming from. Do you? Can you have any idea on that?
I believe it's coming from high up, maybe in the DC level, not to individually mandate each station to do this, but I think the pressure's on these local chiefs at the sector level to make sure these numbers are down, so they come up with any type of reasoning they can, any type of you know makeshift policies to make sure that these numbers get lowered little by little.
One of the things that it used to be, and I know that the government's been reorganized since I left, but it used to be the INS commissioners were all political appointees, and it used to
Mm-hmm.
be all these positions, these senior management positions were all political. In other words, whoever the president was, he picked these
Yeah.
people, and those people will pretty much dance to his tune or tell him what he wants to hear or do whatever he says. Is that still the way things are run with ICE and the other the senior leadership in the over the border patrol?
Yes, I believe it is, and I mean we saw it with when Miss Napolitano was in charge over there. It's everything was secure, nothing ever got through. It was just the safest place in the world to be in her eyes. But as soon as she walked away, it hit the fan.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
you can say whatever you want, but the reality is not necessarily the same as what we're told. And I'm interested in your comments as a United States citizen who's out there counting on the Border Patrol to do their job. Where we're listening to some of the Border Patrol agents, how frustrated they are, but how
Yeah.
frustrated are you as a United States citizen watching border security being politicized, especially at the same time we're told that there's this terrible war on terror. It is a
Yeah.
threat to every single one of us. We must give up our liberties, give up our rights. We must submit to searches every time we get on a plane. They're wanting to do the same thing for buses and trains now. And yet, here on the border, they do everything they can to keep the agents from actually getting the work done. How does that make you feel? Do you want to be a part of the show? If so, call in here at 1 800 580 8255. Fernando, welcome to
Yes,
710 KURV.
You're on the
thank
radio.
you. Yeah, I don't know what I really don't know what the problem is with people not understanding what this administration is doing because I hear a lot of people saying, "Well, doesn't he understand? Doesn't he think he understands perfectly what he's doing? He's trying to overwhelm everybody. He's trying to destroy the country by doing this, and he is attacking us on every front." And it started immediately when this administration came into office under the guise of some good deed for the American people. But it just he's done this to the military. He's done this to everybody that has anything to do with upholding American principles and freedoms and protecting the borders or whatever. If people would read the Declaration of Independence and read the complaints against the king, you'd be surprised to find out that the Declaration of Independence would appear to have been written today against the administration of this country.
Fernando, does it disgust you as much as it does me to see everything become politics and nothing ever being about the truth and about what's really going on?
It actually turns my stomach. It really does. It is unbelievable that the American people are so apathetic to what's going on. Um, and I understand everybody's busy with their life, but everybody has a responsibility of looking out for to see what the politicians are doing because they are the ones that can do the most harm to our liberties.
For-
And the ones that people trust the most are the ones that can do the most harm. And there's so many people that just trust the president totally, and they think that he can do no wrong. And he is proving what I just said. It's not my statement. It's been written long ago.
Let me ask you a
In fact,
question, Fernando.
hmm?
Does your circle of friends know about all this, or are you the only one who's talking about it?
I talk to everybody I can about it, and so they know how I feel about it. And some of them are a little shocked to hear what I say, but the evidence is there. All you have to look, just look at see what's going on, see what he's doing. How on earth can anybody with any degree of feeling in their heart close down the memorial for the men that gave the most? Only because they were fortunate and maybe didn't go ahead of their companions that were shot on D-Day and things like that. The greatest generation here, their last days on the earth, and they're shutting them out of the memorial, things like that. I mean, what a cruel and heartless thing to do. And that just shows that. Another thing, this president, will not negotiate with his opponents and his political opponents. Well, it's a standard that all leaders of any country will not negotiate with their enemy, but they will negotiate with their friends.
And Fernando, don't you find it funny that we negotiate with tyrants, we negotiate with terrorists, but we won't negotiate with Republicans?
I'll put him on hold. We got another caller. Fernando, thank you very much for calling us on 710 KURV. I'm Davis Rank along with Carl Henderson, and watching us is Chris Cabrera of the local Border Patrol. I keep just call it the Border Patrol Union. It's got a longer name than that, but I don't remember what it is. Tommy, thank you very much for calling us on 710 KURV. What do you think?
And a quick point I want to make is these are not non-essential workers that they've laid off.
No.
They're very essential to Obama. They become security guards. They are guarding the national parks for Obama. They know they're going to get back pay. They're still getting paid to be security guards against the rest of the country.
You're talking about the National Park Service personnel?
Exactly. These are now security guards.
Yeah.
They're walking around. They're not doing anything. They're not taking care of the parks. They're just keeping people out. They are now security guards.
They've been politicized, haven't they?
Gestapo army.
Let me ask you, Tommy, earlier we were talking with Chris Cabrera here from the Border Patrol Union. What do you think about when you hear the things about the Border Patrol playing games or not covering their whole area, keeping people in the rear instead of forward deploying them so that where they're out there in the field where they're being used? How does that make you feel, and where do you think that's coming from? Do you think that's coming from poor leadership locally, or do you think that's coming from these political appointees of the president up above?
Oh, that's coming directly from above. It's one of the Minutemen. Now, down on the river, down in Mission, I got them from 14 minutes, and they cooperated. And the Border Patrol is but they have to obey orders. Of course, that comes from above. We know what rolls downhill. So it comes directly from above. They're trying to make us hurt.
So, Tommy, let me ask you.
They're now part of the Obama army.
Tommy, let me ask you, I don't know how old you are. Have you ever seen a situation like this before in your lifetime in this country?
Well, remember in Reagan's time when they shut down the government, we never noticed. We never noticed because Reagan wanted smaller government. It was a welcome change when they shut the government down. Now all of a sudden they're making a big fuss about it like it's never happened before. Come on, guys. This is all Obama doesn't want that stain on his record. And now he's going to make us hurt. This is what dictators do. And by the way, communists never give up power. Never.
Oops, I didn't mean to cut you off in mid-sentence, Tommy. I thought you was done.
One of the things that Tommy was talking about.
I think they miscalculated. I think if he just left things rolling along, he might have gotten some benefit. But the longer this goes on, the less he benefits.
As Tommy said, also, this is the 12th shutdown since the 1980s. There were shutdowns when Jimmy Carter was president. There were shutdowns when Ronald Reagan was president. There were shutdowns when Bill Clinton was president. In fact, the longest one and the most frequent ones were when Bill Clinton was president. It's interesting that Jimmy Carter had a Democratic Senate, Democratic Congress,
really?
And he was a Democratic president, and he still had government shutdowns
I don't even
because
remember
they disagreed over the budgets. Yeah, that was in 1980. And then Ronald Reagan had frequent ones, but the longest government shutdown was 21 days when Bill Clinton was in office. And that was in 1996. So when they act like, when President Obama gets on the television and he says, This has never happened before. No other president has been forced to deal with Congress before. Well, that's what we call lying. And it's a very common thing in Washington, D.C. now. It's disguised sometimes as political correctness, sometimes as propaganda, and sometimes as, we call it what it is, it's lying. We have another caller on the line here. Joe, you're on 710 KURV.
Hello, fellow Earthlings there. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I can't complain. It's Friday. I'm on my way home. I don't work weekends. I'm very happy.
TGIF, huh?
That's a fact. I got 2 points. First is a point. Second is a question. Let me start with the question, I guess. The individuals that are furloughed by the government, don't they always get back pay?
I think in the past they have always gotten past paid.
So wouldn't this be considered a vacation, not doing your job and still getting paid for it?
Yeah,
it may take a little while, but I don't think it's going to take a year for them to get paid for it.
Yeah, when I was watching the people on the news jump and shout and pull their hair out and slash their wrists and hue and cry about all this stuff, I thought, boy, nobody has any perspective on these things. As I said, the longest one we've ever had was 21 days. Most government shutdowns are about 3 to 5 days. And in reality, they're not even government shutdowns. Of the total number of employees out there, the overwhelming majority of them are still going to work. And if Obama wasn't playing games at the Park Service and with the Border Patrol and all these other agencies, it would be pretty much business as usual. Except there's some questions about when's it going to end and when things are going to get back on track.
Yeah, and if it goes on for
and also they get paid every 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So depending when they got paid,
well, if they get paid,
it shouldn't be that critical, I would think.
Depends on your personal finances.
Yeah, I know if I don't get paid for 2 weeks, it's critical for me.
Right.
But
I agree too. But you learn to live with time period.
Joe, thank you very much for calling us on 710 KURV. Your thoughts next. Your last opportunity to tell us what you think about the news about the Border Patrol being told to stand down.